So in the last lesson, we looked at the different ways that pathogens can be spread. And in today's lesson, we are going to look at the defenses that our body has to stop pathogens entering our bodies. So the title of the lesson is going to be Physical and Chemical Barriers. And during this lesson, we are specifically going to focus on the human body and the human defenses. So we have looked at plants in previous lessons during health and disease. Today we are solely going to focus on humans. So everything in this lesson refers to the human body. So I'm going to write down the human body has a number of defenses against pathogens. A number of different ways that they will stop pathogens entering our body. And for the pathogens that do enter, there's a number of different ways that they're going to deal with them. They'll all fall under this these physical and chemical barriers. So I'm going to write down that these defenses are either physical or they are chemical. Okay, so the first type of defense we're going to look at is going to be the physical barriers. This is going to be like a subheading. Remember, you should be taking all of this down in your notes. And as you'll see when we look at the different examples, our physical barriers are exactly that. They are physical barriers that physically stop pathogens entering into our body. With the chemical barriers, there is some sort of chemical reaction that will destroy the pathogen. So the first type we're going to look at are the physical barriers, and the main physical barrier that we have got is the skin. Okay, the skin covers almost all of our body. Because it's covering our body, it stops pathogens from entering our body. Remember, pathogens cause disease. We don't want them entering our body if we can help it. And you've got the skin covering almost all of your body, which will prevent pathogens entering. So I'm going to write skin covers almost all of the body. And there are places it doesn't cover, and we will address those in a second. Okay? Because the skin covers almost all of the body, it will stop pathogens entering. And that's our first line of defense. Rather than trying to fight pathogens when they're in our body, let's just stop them getting into our bodies in the first place. So most of our body is covered in skin. Now, even though we are mostly covered in skin, there are still ways that pathogens can enter our body. And the two main ways, so we're going to write these here, pathogens can enter through. Okay, so we're still talking about the skin. Pathogens can enter through wounds, or, I'm going to squeeze this in here, animal vectors. Okay, so even though we are covered in skin, we are still a little bit vulnerable. If we have a wound or a cut in our body, that can leave us open and allow pathogens to enter. The other one is animal vectors. And we're just going to look at both of these here for a second, right? So I'm just going to write wound. For any of you unfamiliar with that word, that's just a cut, okay? A cut in your skin, a wound or a cut in the skin allows pathogens to enter. So any kind of cut in your skin and the pathogens will be able to get in. Okay, that's why if you do cut yourself, okay, it's really important that you cover the wound. So if you've got quite a large cut, you would always cover that with a plaster or a bandage. And the reason that you would need to do that is to stop pathogens getting into your body through that cut. So we're going to write, cut the skin allows pathogens to enter. We're going to write cover with bandage. Okay, covering it with a bandage will stop those pathogens, well, for the most part, getting in. Okay, luckily, you obviously know that you don't have to keep bandages on for your whole life because your body will naturally repair itself. When we looked at the blood, we looked at a specific type of blood cell called a platelet. And what platelets will do is they will clot the blood and they will form a scab and they will repair the skin. So I'm going to say cover with bandage. So that's what you would do initially if it was a big cut. But then along come your platelets, and they will form a scab, and that scab will then stop the pathogens entering. Okay, so it's really, really important that your platelets are working properly. If you cut yourself, A, you don't want to just keep bleeding and bleeding and bleeding. Okay, so you want to stop bleeding. And then B, you want to be able to repair that wound so that pathogens can't enter your skin. So platelets are really, really important for keeping you safe and keeping you healthy. Okay, so that's our main physical barrier. That is the skin. As I said, it covers most of your body, but not all. And there are two main areas that we're going to look at where your skin does not protect you. Okay, and the main areas we're going to look at is your mouth and your nose. Okay, and the reason your mouth and your nose aren't covered in skin, obviously, is because you need to breathe. Okay, and you need to eat. So we don't want pathogens to get into our body because they make us sick, but we do need oxygen to get into our body, and we do need food to get into our body, and we do need water to get into our body. So it's not practical to have your entire body covered in skin with no openings, okay, because we do need food, we do need oxygen, we do need water. So there have to be some openings. Now, luckily, anywhere that there are openings, there are also extra defenses. The first one we're going to look at is the nose, okay. So when we look at the nose, all right, we know that there's an opening, and we have an opening so that oxygen can enter the lungs. So that is where that opening will lead from your nose to your lungs. So you want the oxygen to get into your lungs, but you don't want the pathogens to be able to get into your lungs through that same route that your oxygen is going. So you need to have some sort of defenses in your nose. So oxygen can enter the lungs, okay, but we don't want pathogens in the lungs. So the nose has certain defenses, and the defenses that the nose has is you've got nose hairs. So they do serve a purpose, okay? They're not just there. You've got nose hairs, and you've also got this sticky substance called mucus in your nose. And what they will do, the mucus in particular, is they will trap all the pathogens. So any dirt and dust and pathogens that you're breathing in, because you've got lots of mucus in your nose and you've got nose hairs, they will trap all that dirt and dust and pathogens in your nose. So we're going to write, they trap the pathogens. Okay, and once the pathogens are trapped there in your nose, two things can happen. Okay, you can either blow your nose, and when you blow your nose, that's obviously going to force that mucus, but also the pathogens outside of your body and into a tissue. Okay, that's then why it's important that you bin your tissues, because then you're binning the pathogens as well. So you can blow your nose, or the mucus is swept to your throat and into your digestive system. Now let me explain what I have just written, okay? This bit I'm assuming makes sense, okay? You're trapping the pathogens in the mucus in your nose, you blow your nose, you're getting those pathogens out of your body, okay? But this bit down here, I'm saying that you can sweep the mucus, and I'll talk about what's doing the sweeping in a second. You can sweep the mucus to the back of your throat, and then that will go down into your digestive system, okay? So we've just said here that your nose is connected to your lungs, okay? Because oxygen goes from your nose into your lungs, okay? But you will also know that you can breathe through your mouth as well as just your nose. And anything that goes in through your mouth has two options. So it's going to your lungs. So that's the oxygen's all going to go down into your lungs. But there's also another opening at the back of your throat, which will lead down to your stomach. So into the digestive system. Okay. And what can happen is that the mucus in your nose can be swept to the back of your throat. And once it's in your throat, instead of continuing down into your lungs, like the oxygen, it can go down the esophagus into your digestive system and into your stomach. Now that might seem a little bit counterintuitive. Why are you pulling these pathogens even deeper inside your body from your nose right down inside you into your stomach? But we're going to look at it again in a second. Hopefully you remember from year 8 what your stomach contains, okay? Your stomach contains hydrochloric acid, and the acidic environment of your stomach is enough to kill most pathogens. So once your pathogens enter your body, okay, you don't want them going down into your lungs, but if they are swept down your back of your throat and into your digestive system instead, they will hit the hydrochloric acid in your stomach and that will destroy them. So I know it seems a bit counterintuitive to sweep these pathogens right deep into your body, but you're sweeping them down into your acidic stomach and it will kill those pathogens, okay? Trap by blowing mucus is swept through your throat and into your digestive system. And I'm just going to write underneath digestive, because we're going to come back to this in a second. When we do chemical defenses, I'm just going to write stomach acid. So remember that there's acid in our digestive system and that's going to kill your pathogens. The other thing I wanted to mention here is I wrote the mucus is swept. What exactly is doing the sweeping? So I wrote swept here. We need to look at what is doing this sweeping. I'm going to draw ourselves a little diagram. We're going to draw ourselves a diagram of a ciliated cell. Okay, so this is a ciliated cell. Okay, this whole thing here is what I would call a ciliated cell. And I'm calling it a ciliated cell because it's a cell that has cilia. Right? These little hair-like structures at the top are called cilia. And what cilia do is cilia sweep. Okay, they can move and they can sweep the mucus in your nose and in your throat. So I'm going to write underneath cilia in brackets, I'm going to write hair-like projections that can sweep. That is the job of the cilia. And you find ciliated cells in your nose because they sweep mucus to the back of your throat. You obviously find them in your throat as well. They can sweep the mucus, okay? But you also find ciliated cells in the female reproductive system. So if you cast your mind way back to year 7 when you looked at reproduction, you should hopefully remember that eggs are released from the ovaries and they're released into the oviducts. If those eggs are fertilized, or even if they are not fertilized, either way, they don't just sit in the oviducts forever. They need to make their way down to the uterus. And the egg cell, if you remember the egg cell, it's just this big circular cell. They don't have a tail. They cannot swim. So the egg cell needs to get from the oviduct down to the uterus, and you've got these ciliated cells in the oviduct, and the cilia, because the cilia can move, they basically sweep the egg the whole way along the oviduct and into the uterus. So these cells are called ciliated cells. They've got these little hair-like projections, and their function is to sweep. Okay, in this case, they are sweeping mucus, but in the female reproductive system, they're responsible for moving the egg from the ovary down into the uterus. Okay, so that's the nose. And the other opening that we mentioned was the mouth. Obviously, from the mouth, you want oxygen entering the lungs. You can breathe through your mouth, but you've also got food and water can enter the digestive system. So it's really important that we have this opening in our mouth. But as with the nose above, because you've got this opening, you need to have defenses. And similar to the nose, you have got mucus in the throat. Okay, and just like it did in the nose, the mucus in the throat will once again trap pathogens, and then the ciliated cells sweep the mucus to the digestive system. So away from the lungs, we don't want them going into the lungs. We don't want lots of mucus and fluid in our lungs, but sweep the mucus to the digestive system where you have got stomach acid to kill pathogens. And sometimes you'll notice it if you've got a really chesty cough and you've got lots of mucus in your lungs, you can kind of cough up phlegm, and yes, it's a bit gross, but when you're coughing up phlegm, that phlegm has trapped lots of pathogens. When you're coughing up that phlegm, you're also getting rid of those pathogens from your body. Any of the mucus that does stay in your throat, instead of being swept down into your lungs, it's going to be swept down into your digestive system where it will be killed by the stomach acid. Okay, so just be aware, physical barriers, you're talking about skin, which covers most of your body. The places it doesn't cover, the main places, your mouth and your nose, they have got mucus and they've got ciliated cells. The mucus trap the pathogens, the cilia will sweep them to the back of the throat where all of that mucus and pathogens will enter your digestive system. So not into your lungs, into your digestive system. Okay. The other thing you can do then is cough out that mucus or blow your nose, which will also remove pathogens from your body.